Okay. My name's David. I'm a third year medical student. I'm one of the GOMI exec members. So our organization strives to provide open access for free educational platform where interested students and healthcare professionals can explore and interact with wilderness and emergency medicine and kind of the various related fields. So I've put together this showcase for different fellowships with the idea of students and residents being able to kind of gain an understanding of what else is available after their kind of initial training. So we have Dr. Andrew Kozminski from Undersea and Hyperbaric Medicine Fellowship at UC San Diego, Dr. Sam Berger and Curtis Lowery from the Space Medicine Fellowship at McGovern Medical School. And then we also have several representatives from the Wilderness Medicine Fellowship at Wake Forest School of Medicine, including Dr. Chris Davis, Seth Hawkins, Dr. Henderson McGinnis, and Dr. Abigail Wehner. So kind of the way this is going to work, I know Dr. Kozminski is in a little bit of a time crunch, so he's going to go ahead and talk about the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medicine Fellowship at UC San Diego first. We'll kind of go through some questions with that, and then the rest of it will be kind of a panel where I'll have the other two fellowships also explain theirs, and we'll kind of run through some questions. So we can go ahead and get started, Dr. Kozminski.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, for understanding that. I have a page for a carbon monoxide poisoning that I'm probably going to need to go in for here in like the next 30, 40 minutes. So that works out. I appreciate it. Right, I'm one of the UCSD Undersea and Hyperbaric Medicine Fellows. Undersea and Hyperbaric Medicine is an ACGME fellowship. It's a 1-year fellowship. There are about like 9 programs or something like that in the United States. Most of them are like in the middle of the United States. And then there's quite a few that are coastal. And the fellowship itself focuses, of course, on undersea medicine, which is going to pertain to like diving and scuba diving. And then, of course, it goes on to hyperbaric medicine, which is the whole specialty itself, like the whole special thing. So we're pressing people and putting, ideally we're putting sick divers into a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. But of course, being in the fellowship and being a fellow on call, you get called for the 15 particular indications that there are for hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which a popular one, especially in the middle of the United States or anywhere really, is carbon monoxide poisoning. And of course, there's a bunch of other indications. Let's see. So there's those 9 fellowships. And of course, per fellowship, maybe there's 1 to 3 fellows, depending on where you're going. So UCSD, we have 3 fellows. One of our fellows is a Canadian dive medical officer, and so she's entirely funded by the Canadian Navy, and so we get a lot of good bacon and a lot of maple syrup, and that helps us kind of fund the rest of we sell that on the street, and we can fund the rest of our salaries through that. But and then the other 2, myself and my other colleague, were both emergency medicine trained. And the Canadian dive medical officer, she is family medicine trained. And then, at the beginning of the fellowship, like early on in the year, all of the fellowships come together for like an intensive 10-day course to kind of like kickstart a lot of the learning and getting to know those fellowships and those fellowship programs. My understanding is that 1 to 3 fellows per program, and then each program is quite different, but with the same understanding that like by the end of the year you're going to be able to treat critical patients in both multi-place chambers, which are like large, many people in them chamber, all the way down to like treating people just for wounds or like wound care in these single monoplace chambers. I think of a place like Hennepin. Hennepin's program for UHM is quite robust, and they have like a huge, nice multi-place chamber that we all relish and look at and go, whoa, you guys have a lot of resources, and they are really big. I mean, they're not seeing as many divers as we are, like, right? We're in San Diego, like it's the best place to go look for diving. Um, but it's totally variable, like how many people are diving this year compared to other years. Hennepin does a huge like limb salvage program as part of their fellowship. We do a lot of wound care. Probably 7 of our 12 months is like dedicated wound care. So even when I'm in San Diego, like the best place to go see diving and sick divers and like treat the bends, we're still doing a ton of wound care. Um, and that is not something that I necessarily thought was going to be an amazing part of my fellowship, but at the end of the day is like pretty rewarding, especially when you're in the emergency department the other, rest of your medical life. And you're just kind of seeing people die a lot, or like, hopefully not dying. Uh, you're then able to actually have like continuity of care with these people that you're able to kind of heal and help salvage their limbs. It's kind of cool. I've definitely learned to like that aspect of it. Um, let's see. So I mean, like each fellowship though is quite different. Duke is another one that's like Duke and UCSD are the two that I would say are most adept at like looking at sick divers. LSU has a really cool opportunity with their program where they actually take care of like all of the Gulf Coast. And so like there are going to be oil rigs out in the Gulf Coast, and the commercial folks out there that are associated with the oil rigs get seen by the LSU program. Um, let's see. As far as like, these unique opportunities, it's definitely dependent on which program you go to. UCSD, we have a direct relationship with the Divers Alert Network. And so we will go as part of one of our electives over to the Carolinas and like hang out with the Divers Alert Network. And we get to participate in calls from like sick divers across the world. And so like, if someone is diving in Bikini Bottom, which is a real place, not just in SpongeBob, but that's like someone's diving out there, which is great diving. And there's an emergency that happens, someone has decompression sickness or an arterial gas embolism, they'll call the Divers Alert Network, and it's kind of up to Dan to get them sorted out and like figured out on how to transport them and get them to your nearest emergency department so you can make sure they're okay and then get treated in the closest chamber. So we get to do that. If you're military or if you're affiliated with the military, it's pretty easy to like jump into like experimental dive units as part of UCSD. Just in general, like we do see the SEALs because they train out here. So like if Navy SEALs have a bad issue that happens during a dive and their particular dive medical officer doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with it, they can come to UCSD and we'll treat them. And, they do some really cool stuff with, rebreathers and like breathing 100% oxygen at all times and doing cool operations. And so that's definitely been a part of the fellowship. That's pretty unique and interesting to UCSD in particular. Of course, like, and I know you guys from UT Houston. I mean, like, you know, aerospace medicine was what got me into medical school. And so like as far as like doing hyperbarics, that's a big part of it for me. My research this year has been on like how to think about hyperbarics in space. And so the neutral buoyancy lab is like a big deal, and they have hyperbaricists there. The current director is an LSU grad, and one of my buddies just graduated from the UTMB program, and he'll be an operational flight surgeon at NASA next year. And he was a UCSD hyperbarics grad too. So like these two things are like closely related in the fact that that's, you get some pretty cool, unique opportunities. I'm sure they're going to have tons of awesome opportunities as part of their fellowship. Let's see. And then let's see. Right. Just to be like more specific, you don't have to be an EM trained physician to do a UHM fellowship. As far as like requirements to go into the fellowship itself, there really aren't any. I mean, I had some significant hyperbarics research like in the last, 5 to 6 years that I've done that made me feel comfortable with doing this. But in all honesty, like you can be just really into the idea of like doing wound care and limb salvage, and that's enough, you know? So it's a pretty niche field. So if you like have a good letter of recommendation and show that you've had some interest, that's usually pretty good to help you get into one of these undersea hyperbaric medicine fellowships. But and I remember like in my interview process, I mean, people were coming from all over the place. And so, there's not any one particular thing that's necessarily going to like make you stand out. So I would say just like strong interest for sure. I am paid poorly. I mean, this is an ACGME fellowship, and so like I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Like I'm paid as a PGY, what, like 4 or 5 or whatever. And the time that I get to be in the emergency department, I'm paid like $34 an hour. So I don't necessarily think this is a great money maker for anybody. But it is, getting me my undersea and hyperbaric medicine specialty and kind of letting me do some stuff that I want to do. So it's kind of the trade-off there. And then different fellowships have different ways of cutting that pie. Like we have 3 fellows in our program, and one of them is funded by, the Canadian Navy, and then the other 2 of us, we're like funding our own program by not being paid as full attendings, but still working as attendings in the emergency department. So that's just part of that. And then let's see here, as far as like the actual jobs that you can come out with, they're interesting for sure. Once again, like if you are part of the military, you're already kind of set, right? Like, I mean, like you can go do like, aviation medicine with this stuff. You can do undersea medicine with this stuff. There's a lot of weird jobs too that you can get. There are people that are doing like some high pressure drilling in the United States that like we wouldn't know it, but there's a huge, 60-foot tall drilling through our country right now. And like the people at the head of that drill are in a hyperbaric atmosphere, or like in our hyperbaric atmosphere. So they're at risk for decompression sickness, and there's people that take care of those people. I mean, it's just weird stuff out there. I like next year in like St. Louis, I'll be close to you guys. I'll be at University of Iowa. I'll be their hyperbarics director there. So like you can do academics and do a lot of cool stuff. It's a heavy research field because beyond well-established guidelines, it's snake oil, right? So there's a lot of hyperbarics in the United States that is being tossed around, and it's just like, oh, gut-wrenching to get patients that end up getting kind of hurt from people that don't know what they're doing. So yikes, I'm gonna get off track going on a soapbox about that, but it's heavy in research, and so like there's a lot of research available, and it's pretty cool to do the research that like you can do just for like wound care, for finding other indications for hyperbarics, and actually like really making those impactful. And then of course like I'm an aerospace medicine junkie guy, so like I like the idea of figuring out how to use it in space and stuff. And then as far as, let's see, other things that people are doing right now, like I said, I mean they're either doing hyperbarics at like academic facilities, military, NASA, And then wound care. Wound care, of course, is like a huge one. And it's a big money. I mean, it's a big money maker. So like that's what keeps most of these programs alive is the volume of wound care patients that you take care of. And then you're able to also facilitate like a 24/7 chamber to like take care of the more emergent indications like central retinal artery occlusion, failing flap or graft, carbon monoxide poisoning, idiopathic sudden sensorineural hearing loss. Like these are cool indications that I never really would have thought of until like being in the fellowship. But you get to see some really amazing stuff happen with people that are like losing one of their senses and comes back with these treatments. It's nuts. Just want to make sure that. And then as far as just like anything else, I when it comes down to like fellowships, go in with your eyes wide open here. I mean, like, you do not have to do a fellowship to do hyperbaric medicine. You do not have to do a fellowship to like, and I'm not going to go there, but like, you don't have to do a fellowship to necessarily do what you want to do. A lot of the people like, I'm going to be the only, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be the only hyperbaric medicine trained doctor in the state of Iowa. But does that mean that people are not doing hyperbarics there? No, not at all. And you can do like a 40-hour course, which is available, but like it doesn't give you the same stuff. Like you probably shouldn't be treating critical intubated patients in a multi-place chamber if you've only done that. But I'm afraid to say like people do. And so, but you can, if you want to be a wound care doctor and are really into limb salvage, like go and learn wound care. And like you don't necessarily have to do a fellowship. Fellowships are not for everybody. Like it's been really hard on my family to like just do another fellowship. And it's just like, oh man. But at the same time, fellowships like give you really unique training and like really in-depth training. So keep that in mind. But that's what I gotta say about like fellowships in general. Any questions or?
Thank you for speaking about your fellowship program. Very interesting to hear about. You've answered all of the questions I have prepared. If anyone else has any, you can speak up.
Hey, thanks for your talk, Andrew. Did you know Craig Cutts? Was that the one
Yeah.
that just
Yeah.
graduated? Yeah. I like him, man. He's a good guy.
Yeah, Craig and I have been friends for probably 7 or 8 years. We met at asthma.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah. Asthma's
Are you
going on
guys at
right now.
asthma right now?
No, we're not at asthma right now. I had some other fellowship duties to do. So yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't make it, obviously.
Yeah, fair enough. Are you still interested in aerospace?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Cool. We can talk, man.
Yeah. Email me whenever you want. I mean, like, I'll have a nice big multi-place chamber that I'm going to be basically making into my own little adventure. So
Very cool. Good luck to you.
yeah, nice to meet you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kozminski. So we can go ahead and with the other two programs, if you guys could just start by just giving a brief overview of your fellowship, and then we can kind of go question by question, have you guys answer. So if Sam and Dr. Curtis want to start.
Can do, man. We had a brief PowerPoint presentation if you wanted us to go through that, or if you just want to do the question by question, we can do that as well. So however you want.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to pull up a PowerPoint. I'm gonna be honest.
We can share our screen if you want. Let's see.
Yeah, you can do that. That works.
Okay. We just want to show off some of our super cool pictures of space. All right, we're getting it pulled up right now. Oh, it's disabled currently. Disabled.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to
Should be the share screen feature down at the bottom, and then if it should allow participants. If not, we can just talk through everything. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So
No,
if you could just
no
talk through,
worries.
if you want to
Or
send
just-
over
yeah.
that PowerPoint though, we can send that out to.
Yeah, of course, we can do that. All right, so I think the first question, let me go to the top there.
Yeah.
So I'll introduce myself real quick. My name's Trey Lowery. I know it says Curtis on everything, but I go by Trey. I am the first year fellow going into my second year of fellowship. So it is a 2-year fellowship. This is Dr. Samuel Beeger. He's going to be coming in this year as the first year fellow starting in July. So congratulations to Sam being selected.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
you're welcome, man. So it is a 2-year fellowship. We do 8 months that are dedicated specifically to working with commercial space entities. So we're talking like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and then Vast Space is one of the new companies that's out there. They're going to be building the first space hotel, which is very interesting, in orbit. And so we work with these different organizations. We learn how they operate. We give medical advice to these organizations. And we plan the future of humans going into space. So the ultimate, austere medicine wilderness frontier, where you have very little resources, limited connectivity to Earth. How are you going to treat appendicitis in that situation? How are you going to treat a kidney stone in that situation? So we go through all those scenarios and we come up with protocols with limited resources, how we manage it either temporarily or definitively, depending on different scenario, or how do we get them back to Earth in a rapid manner and stabilize them until we get back. So those are kind of the challenges we're dealing with. Very similar to wilderness medicine. You go to Antarctica, same challenges. Limited connectivity, limited resources, that kind of stuff. So those are the 8 months we do. Another thing that's very important to us is maintaining our emergency medicine skills. There's some other fellowships like the aerospace fellowships that are out there, and you don't do emergency medicine during those 2 years, so you lose the practice. That's something we're very afraid of losing because we've worked our whole lives to become emergency medicine doctors. We want to maintain those skills. So essentially, it's every other month we're back in the ER practicing again at a high volume level 1 trauma center. Next month, we're at a space entity, high volume trauma center, back to space entity. So that's kind of the whole fellowship. It's broken up a little bit different depending on the year. So sometimes we'll be out of the ER for 2 months, but then we're always coming back for 2 months after that. And so 6 months for each of those years is back in the ER. The remaining months in between there, we get FAA aeromedical examiner certification. We do dive medicine, so we do some hyperbarics, deep sea medicine. We do flight EMS as well, so like working on the helicopters here in town, which I got to wake up 3 a.m. tomorrow morning because I'm doing a flight, so that's going to be great. But it's a variety of different things that we think are going to be beneficial to human spaceflight and expanding into the stars. So the helicopter stuff, it's confined space medicine. So like, if we're treating someone in a capsule, like the Blue Origin capsule comes down and there was a fire on the inside of it, how are you going to intubate someone and extract them from that capsule, keeping C-spine alignment, those kind of things. Performing those same things in a helicopter, right? It's a very confined space, managing critical patients. We also do all the medical training for every astronaut who leaves from the United States. So I trained 11 NASA astronauts. We've trained all of the Axiom crew, and we've trained all of the SpaceX crews that have gone up as well. So before they go on their flight, they come through our ER, and we teach them the basic medical procedures they might need to know while they're either on orbit or during their short duration mission going up and coming back down. So they all come through our ER and we teach everyone who goes up. And we should be in the next year or so, we're working with the French Space Agency and the European Space Agency to train their astronauts as well. So we're kind of the hub for the medical training for any astronaut who goes to space. Cosmonauts, different story, and taikonauts, totally different story as well. And then we get our aerospace engineering masters during our 2-year fellowship as well. So we do longitudinal classwork. Texas A&M has been fantastic working with us. And so we take 1 course per semester, just in a variety of aerospace engineering topics. I've gone through my second one so far, and I got 2 more to go. And then we do 2 more after that to finish off the 6 courses to get our certification in aerospace engineering through Texas A&M. So it's been a struggle to do all of the other stuff on top of that, but it's really, really rewarding. And I actually really love engineering, so it's been fantastic to go through those. In addition to all of that, we also do didactic education with UCLA, Harvard and University of Arizona, which are the other space medicine programs. UCLA and Harvard are space medicine EM specific. And then the University of Arizona is the first space surgery program, which is really interesting. I think they currently have one fellow per year at that one. But the other two, so there's 3 space medicine programs right now, UCLA, Harvard, and us. So I think that's the first question answered.
Yeah, thank you. And then I know there's several people on, whoever wants to speak from Wake Forest.
Hey everyone, I can run the ball to start. I'm Seth Hawkins. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, so we're here in the central and mountainous parts of North Carolina. It is really cool to be the non-space related, undersea related. Like I love it that we're like wilderness medicine has become so mainstream that now we're like the ones that are just out there doing straight up wilderness medicine, which is what we focus on. So we have a 1-year wilderness medicine fellowship that is based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Extends out throughout really the entirety of the state of North Carolina, and has opportunities for activities really around the globe. And our particular, I think, areas of specialty are water-based rescue based on the strengths of our faculty, and wilderness EMS, meaning not just wilderness medicine, but actually search and rescue and patient care in wilderness settings. So in keeping with that, we try very hard to focus on the patient care elements of what wilderness medicine is directed towards, as well as actual operations, service on teams and programs that would actually be delivering medical care to patients in a wilderness setting. So by virtue of being a 1-year academically based program, we follow the Wilderness Medical Society guidelines for wilderness medicine programs. There's no, ACGME status right now for wilderness medicine programs. Otherwise, fellows with us work at one of a number of clinical sites in North Carolina in an emergency department as an emergency department fellow. Those sites tend to be community-based, which we like because it's out there more in settings outside of the academic center where wilderness care, is happening more remotely from cities. And I'm very pleased to say that we have our incoming fellow here, Abbie, if you want to wave and say hello. And we also have one of our former fellows here, Chris Peluso, who is our pandemic year fellow. So mentoring Chris Peluso through a pandemic was a real challenge for a wilderness medicine program. And we thought we did some cool things. So I might, because we have a former and an incoming fellow, I might hand it over to them to talk about some of the questions that were flowed this way about the mechanics of the experience, like pay, clinical, shift rotation expectations, and the experiences of being a fellow in this program, sort of hearing it straight from the people who have gone through it or are choosing to do it.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for providing that overview. So I guess we can start with what are some of the unique opportunities that your fellowship offers? Trey and Sam, if you want.
Yeah, Sam stepped out for a little bit, but I'll go ahead and answer that one as well. So these fellowships, not only UT Houston, but the UCLA and the Harvard ones are, unique, and just the whole program of space medicine. The whole field is essentially brand new. It's 3 years old. It's different. So the previous UTMB, Wright State, Mayo had aerospace medicine programs. And so they were heavily focused on preventative medicine, keeping NASA astronauts healthy here on the ground. This new field of medicine, where we're going to have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people going into space, they're going to have medical problems. And how are we going to treat those medical problems when they occur? And so that's where space medicine kind of came from. It was based off the preventative medicine model going into more of an acute care emergency medicine model. So we still do preventative medicine, but we're expanding beyond that. So that's unique about our program, that the whole field is completely new, essentially. We're building off the giants of, wilderness medicine. How do we do these things in austere environments with little resources? So we're building off those textbooks and the people who did that research as well. Working directly with commercial space programs is a brand new thing. So it's different than working directly with NASA. We are more heavily focused on sending, Jeff Bezos with like his heart problem, or, William Shatner into space with like 80 years old. He's going to have medical problems. How do we send people like that to space and do it in a safe manner? Very different than sending, a 40-year-old completely healthy NASA astronaut. So there's a whole new variety of problems to solve, a ton of research to be done. And so that is very unique about this program, and I love it. So a lot of questions to be answered.
And then I guess from Wake Forest, I guess there are several wilderness medicine kind of fellowships, but like what makes Wake Forest, I guess, unique, or what do you guys really pride yourself on?
I can talk a little bit about that. This is Chris. So one of the things Wake has is the backyard, which is nice. So we do rope and swiftwater as our primary, and then interface of wilderness EMS. I think one of the biggest things is we're pretty active state for that kind of stuff, and we're involved actually, both the fellow as well as a bunch of us who work in the space with Wake, or not a bunch, but the few of us who are in the department who work in the space with Wake Forest are kind of in the same our own trajectories in terms of how we use it. Opportunities to the fellows are pretty robust. So we all harvest things. So as attendings and mentors, we all harvest things in terms of our own uh, academic and workspace. And then some of that actually gets passed down to the fellows. So Seth was a big mentor for me my fellowship year. And what he could bring to the table was a little bit different than what everybody else can bring. Everybody else has their niche. So one of the things that's big for us is the mentorship, the contracts that come in, things like that, the opportunities from that standpoint, which is kind of where I live more of, is the contract work. On top of that, we have a few different people who are interested and experts in a few different things. So one of the guys that works in the fellowship, Chris Davis, he's actually the main training person in terms of the field training. He's the assistant fellowship director. Used to be a river guide on like 4+ rapid rivers. Still does a lot of that. There's multiple trips a year that we actually go as a fellowship out and do those things, take the fellow for that. Also used to be a climbing guide, and him and I now run a course that we put the fellow as well as the EMS fellows through every year. So we do it in kind of modules broken up that way, and use the expertise for that. Seth brings a lot of stuff from navigating contracts in the world of contract work for both recreational as well as government work. And we all kind of participate in those things as well. And then there's a big education module for us in like how to be an educator in this space, because it changes. And a lot of residents honestly aren't taught how to educate people. They're taught how to stand up in front of people and give a presentation. And that's more of a teaching model as opposed to a truly educating model. The fellows get a chance to teach people everywhere from students, basic first responders, all the way up to advanced paramedics, critical care flight people, things like that, and everywhere in between, as well as guides. We just started a project in Costa Rica with the guides down there that do isolated guiding on a couple of rivers down there in terms of patient care and patient evac for them. Myself and Seth do quite a few things in the government space, as well as with U.S. Forest Service, and then a few of us work with National Park Service as well. And all that we bring the fellow into all those things as much as we possibly can. Honestly, our goal is to have more opportunities than the fellow can say yes to in terms of time, and find their niche, and then get them really like moving in that direction. And then we have other we have other baseline stuff that exists in other fellowships. We have a Nepal trip every year. There's chances for other international work. I'm actually working on one right now that I'll probably loop the fellow into at some point. I just have to get it off the ground right now. So there's always people working in these spaces, and there's kind of a space for every type of fellow that wants to come in. And one of the things we really try to get from fellows coming in the door is, what are you interested in being like when you're done with this? You're not going to be a rope guide. Like you want to be a climbing guide, go to climbing guide school, right? But at the same time, you're not just going to have a year vacation. Like, we want to know what you want to be and what you want to get out of it. So do you want to become a master outdoor educator? You want to become, cognizant and proficient with contract work and be able to do, medically directed rescue space and that kind of stuff? Or do you want to take it in a different direction, which we can facilitate? I think at this point we've got, four really solid mentors in the space that can take the fellow wherever they kind of want to go in the wilderness space.
So kind of getting into like the nuts and bolts of these fellowship programs a little bit. I was hoping you guys could talk a little bit about the requirements to like apply and get into your fellowship programs. And then like, is it only available to emergency medicine trained physicians or kind of like Dr. Kozminski was talking about earlier, they accept like family med. So if you guys could just talk a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, I can talk about this since I just went through it too. So our fellowship right now is only available to emergency medicine. Since we do work, it's heavily funded by working in the emergency department. That's the only that's the only specialty that's available to apply right now. I think in the future we're looking to open it up to other specialties, but that's probably not going to be happening for at least the next couple cycles. The requirements really are just to graduate from an emergency medicine program and to apply. And then when you get your interview, it's actually a problem-based interview, which is pretty cool. So we actually took this this method from SpaceX, where basically you get assigned a problem or a project about 2 weeks before the interview date, and then you basically present your project during the interview, and you kind of walk through your thought process, and it's really designed to be similar to what the actual job is going to be like if you were working for like a commercial space organization.
But the U.S. citizens only.
Oh yeah, U.S. citizens only. We do get a lot of inquiries from people all over the world who are very interested. And yeah, right now it's available to U.S. citizens only too. It has to do not only with the main thing is actually with like kind of ITAR regulations, because you are dealing with companies who have large defense contracts, and just to make it simple, it's one of our requirements as well.
I can talk briefly about Wake Forest Wilderness Medicine's requirements. The only official requirement is successful completion, or at least like that trajectory of an emergency medicine residency. So we do only take residency or emergency medicine folks at this point. Yeah, part of the fellowship is working within the emergency department, and we aren't set up to do that within other departments at this point. So just emergency medicine, and we'll do a split of time in the ED at a community shop, as Seth mentioned earlier. And then the rest of your time is spent out doing education, research, all sorts of different projects, depending on what it is that you as the fellow are most interested in. I think that's one of the things that is really great about our program. As Chris was highlighting, we have mentors in all different kind of aspects of this field. And so what you're doing with your time really depends on what you as a fellow are really excited about doing and how you want to grow. And so you can kind of self-direct and jump in on any of those projects that exist and kind of create your own with the mentorship that exists.
And I was also hoping that you guys could talk a little bit about what life looks like as a fellowship trained physician in your fields. And maybe like some things that people are doing who have previously graduated from the programs.
I can talk a little bit about this from our program standpoint. So Chris Davis was the first graduate of this program. He did a dual EMS and wilderness fellowship at the time. He did 2 years and did the EMS on top of the wilderness medicine fellowship. He now runs a lot in the education space, is kind of where he's gravitated towards, his research and education. And by education, he does everything from, I mean, he's very much field education. So when I say education, I mean, he's running workshops on the river. He's running, workshops for NPS, people like that. as well as our own med school, and then obviously our fellowship, and then somewhat in the residency too, actually. So that's kind of where he's gone. I don't want to speak too much for him, but that's kind of where he's gone, and he's always happy and amped to talk about it. Myself, I've gone towards the government contract, other contract, and prolonged field care space. So I actually instruct for a organization that holds military contracts for prolonged field care. So we teach special operations and other special operations rescue folks from around the world. Both travel and home for that. And then I also work as a U.S. Forest Service doc along with Seth. We handle the North Carolina forests for that, and we interface with the NPS as well. And then in the education space, we interface a lot with the NPS and other government contracts. Seth and I both also work on a contract for the DEA and the U.S. Marshals here at Wake Forest for their wilderness and austere component, and I also work for their tactical component. I've started doing a little bit of tactical work as well. So that's kind of, we've broadened out into a lot of spaces. Like I mentioned, Chris and I also do some education. He does more than I do as far as education for EMS as well, kind of crossing the lines and getting our EMS fellows involved in it too, as well as other wilderness fellowships around the region here. We work a lot with Georgia and Virginia and kind of combine forces and do things like that. Other folks that have graduated from here. So our most recent fellow who's just finishing up, she'll stay here locally. I'm not sure like where she wants to take things for her, but she seems very interested and actually very good at more of the outdoor education type of deal, type of model. And again, I won't speak for her, but and then trying to think. That's about. I mean, we're a pretty young program. We had a year where we didn't take anybody as well, but we're a pretty young program. Those have been our graduates that have gone on different places to do stuff. Some of us have stayed, some of us have gone away. So that's kind of where it is. And then again, like I mentioned, mentorship wise, I mean, we haven't had anybody come through that wanted to really do a lot more of the recreational space type stuff, but we have that opportunity because that exists in terms of independent contractor work, things of that nature. But most of what I can tell you I do is quite a bit of independent contract work with people and alongside people who do this kind of stuff in the real world, in kind of, good medicine to bad places kind of thing. So.
And to emphasize sort of the national footprint, one of our graduates went to New Mexico and one right now is in the Northwest. So some people have stayed, other people have gone to really, dramatically different parts of the country. So it's a great staging point for really any environment that people might want to work in. And again, just to emphasize the choose your own adventure sort of element, I think one of the strengths is people come in really hoping to explain where they want to take it. And then we have such, I think, wide and deep resources that we can usually foster people into the pathway that they want to take. So based in the Southeast, but definitely we can sort of have a national footprint.
Yeah, and we also, I didn't mention the volunteer stuff, but we're all also pretty deeply involved with volunteer stuff. So Chris, Seth, and I are all on, Chris Davis, Seth, and I are all on a mountain rescue team here in North Carolina, and are active with that. And then I work on a county heavy rescue team as well. And I do everything from vehicle extrication to agricultural extrication, in confined space, structural collapse, all that kind of firefighting stuff too, which kind of comes in handy for when you find yourself in various situations. That knowledge of machinery and confined space work comes in handy for that kind of stuff. So.
Nice. And yeah, for our fellowship, really probably the number one like end goal is to work for a commercial spaceflight program. See, can you guys still hear me?
Looks like it
froze. Oh, it looks like it froze there for a second. Did you guys hear that? Okay. Yeah, so really with our program, you're getting 8 months plus working like solely directly only with like these commercial space companies. And so that's a real advantage of our program. The current traditional aerospace training programs do not provide that. You know, if your goal was to work for NASA and be a lifetime NASA flight surgeon, you know, the UTMB program, the traditional aerospace program track may actually be better because you'll actually spend some more time with NASA at UTMB than you will at our program. However, they don't spend any time with commercial space flight organizations. And so, yeah, Axiom, like one company, and it's with like a month max. And so really we found this niche of commercial space flight programs not like needing a lot of medical resources and needing a lot of medical help, and not being able to have anybody who's trained and who they know. You know, as much as you're learning during this fellowship and during that time there, it's almost like a job interview too. That's ultimately where most of our grads are wanting to go, and like where we will end up going. That being said, there are a lot of a lot of other opportunities you could do. Some people, you know, have started their own companies. Some people have, you know, done some work with NASA. Some people have done some other stuff too. So.
And then finally, is there just like anything else that you guys want people to know about your fellowship or your area of work kind of in general?
Kind of leading off where Sam started. So space medicine, completely new field. There's a bunch of opportunities with, you know, the 3 main corporations that are out there right now, but it seems like every single year there's a new company coming out that are trying to fly humans to space. And every single one of those companies is going to need a specialist in space medicine or aerospace medicine, working with the company and making sure that their protocols are human safe or human compatible. Because all these companies are founded by engineers, and engineers are very, very frustrated that there's a squishy part on the inside of their nice metal machinery that can be damaged really easily. And so they really hate that concept that there's something like very, very breakable and has like a super high amount of maintenance. And so you have to come in there and be like, hey, you cannot pull 13 Gs. A human cannot tolerate that. So you have to go and tell them these things. You know, we have to breathe oxygen. We have to get rid of our CO2. We have to get rid of our other wastes. We got to eat. And so just, you know, letting the engineers realize those things and have these specific things we train on every day, you know, in the ER that most people don't realize, like especially engineers do not realize that they have to take those into consideration, especially if you're flying an 80-year-old person into space, right? They're going to have these medical problems. We're going to have to deal with these situations. How do we prepare for those scenarios? And so that's a really cool, unique problem that we're going to be dealing with. And it's really interesting to me. And I think we're just getting this at the very beginning of this exponential ramp up into space travel. You know, Blue Origin wanting to have 10,000, 100,000, 1 million people on the moon, SpaceX trying to do the same thing on Mars. You're going to need docs for that. And that's what we're training for. So really exciting future happening.
I think I mean, my opinions on fellowships in general are you know, I'm a chronically overtrained individual. I've done 3 residencies and did a fellowship, and I don't think there's any problem in doing extra training. Obviously, it's just getting somebody to pay you to go to school at the end of the day. So I think do them if you're interested. If you're interested in that subject matter too, you know, you'll always find people that say, well, you really don't have to do this thing. You could go and do it as you wanted to, and you can for most things. I mean, that's actually true for most things. I mean, if you want to do search and rescue and you want to do mountain rope rescue, go join a mountain rope search and rescue team. I mean, you can do that if that's all you're interested in doing. And I mean, that's fine. Just like anything else, right? If you want to go take a difficult airway course, but you want to get better at airways, you go do that. I think where fellowship's set apart, and I've said this many times on many roundtables, is the mentorship. And if there's no mentorship there, it's not really worth anything, in my opinion. Because the reason you go to fellowship is twofold, right? You go to spend a lot of time on a topic you're interested in that you didn't get to do before, and you want to make it part of your career or part of your life going forward. And the other thing you go for is honestly the connections. And so if the people you show up for you, I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, I wouldn't be doing half the stuff I do if I didn't get involved and actually get some mentorship for these kind of things. So I think it's one of those things that if you're going to fellowship or if you're contemplating a fellowship and you actually want to be folded in as part of your career and do more than one very specific thing out of that world, then it's probably worth entertaining the idea of a fellowship and seeing what you can do. I mean, just to roll back to the pay thing too. I mean, wilderness medicine fellowships are non-ACGME. We get paid as attending. So the hours you work as an attending, you get paid and attending hourly. I mean, so at the end of the day, if you want to work 4 or 5 more shifts a month and be paid as basically a full-time attending, you can be. We keep our shifts fairly low because we believe in the opportunities of the fellow, and that's part of mentorship. That's reality. And again, if you're not doing that, like I take issue with that. If you do a model where you're 1 in, 1 out or something, that's one thing, but you've got to have the time is my point. Like there has to be a constructive amount of time that fellow can do something with in that year or 2 years. It's a very short time. It's significantly less than a residency, and we all know residency is pretty short anyway. And then also the other thing that fellowships gives you is the ability to link up with other people. I mean, like I said, I do a lot of prolonged field care now, and that's my niche and what I do. And I've gotten linked up with so many different groups and so many different like areas of medicine by doing that, especially by working with a really stable group of people who do that kind of work. I mean, I've gotten to go and train with Hilo aquatic rescue teams down in Florida and gotten to go all over and do all kinds of fun stuff. Beat your body up, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun. So that's what I would say. I mean, that's like my parting thing is just the roundabout doing fellowships, because there's so many people who are talking about fellowship glut these days and overtraining people and training too many of this or that. But there's a lot of things you can do with a lot of these fellowships, and at the end of the day, you find constructive ways to use the information if you're really interested in it. And the mentorship gets you. I mean, if there's no mentorship in the fellowship you're looking at, or you doubt it, or it's all local or something, then it's probably not worth it. And you should probably look at another one, because there's ones out there with mentorship on the national, regional, international scope that are really useful for folks.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the call have any questions? All right, I think that's it. I really appreciate you guys taking your time to talk about your guys' fellowships. I'm gonna reach out and try to get some contact information for who people can talk to apply or get more information about your guys' programs. Yeah, so I think that's it. Thank you guys so much.
Right on. Thank you. It was really fun.
Thanks for organizing, man. That's good.
Yeah.